Good morning, everyone. This is Martin Zender. I am your host into yet another revelatory adventure, closing up the week here. And I see that the Apostle John is just kind of giving up on things. He's kind of throwing up his hands and saying, let the filthy remain filthy still. He's given up on humanity. And he's an old man at this time. Legend has it. And I think he has said, well, look, Israel's beyond reformation. It's just like Elijah. Paul mentions Elijah in Romans chapter 11, that Elijah said, they've torn down your altars, they've killed your prophets, I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. God says, I have reserved for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. And Elijah would have said, where are they? What happened to them? I don't see them. You got to be kidding me. But God has left for himself the faithful. So at this point in John's mind, I think it's like it was up to God before, but now it's like up to God. He's tired. He's discouraged a little bit. John is. He's very matter of fact in the unveiling. He's not freaking out. He's not doing cartwheels. He's not hyperventilating. He's not experiencing heart palpitations or shortness of breath. He's just saying it like it is. I think he's a little jaded. I think he realizes that his life is coming to an end. Of course, this is a man, you got to feel bad for this guy, along with Peter and whoever remained a few years after the manifestation of Jesus Christ on the earth. They saw the kingdom pulled out from under them. It must have been a real blow. This is why in Acts chapter 1, verse 6, when Jesus is about to rise into heaven, and the disciples ask him, are you at this time restoring the kingdom to Israel? One quick question before you go. Is this the time when, we're going to be ruling the earth? And Jesus said, not yours to know the times or the seasons. Well, he had to tell them that, because if he had told them no, there's going to be 2,000 years that will ensue. The kingdom will be withdrawn for an indeterminate amount of time because of the callousness of the nation Israel. I have a new thing to do through this lunatic named Saul. You may have heard of him. He's a Pharisee now, but he's going to be a spokesperson of mine to speak to kings and to the sons of Israel. And he's going to testify of a new evangel that will explain for one and for all why I had to suffer for 6 hours on the cross, when if I was merely a sacrifice for Israel, that is the antitype of the lamb, then I would have had my throat slit on an altar and would have died mercifully without pain as the blood trickled out of my neck. But no, it's not yours to know the times. And so they were still somewhat enthusiastic. At this time, they were breathless. At this time, they were experiencing anomalies of heart rate. And so, what a glorious thing. It really gave them the impetus to go out there on the day of Pentecost. And after the tongues of fire land on them, the Holy Spirit comes upon them. They're announcing the kingdom. The kingdom is near, yet it withdrew. It withdrew. And John experienced this, poor guy. Seriously, I feel bad for him. Where did the kingdom go? And so he's a little bit, I think this helps to explain this saying that we covered yesterday in the unveiling. As soon as I find it. Yeah. Let the injurer injure still. Let the filthy one be filthy still. And let the just one do righteousness. I don't think the order of this is uninspired either. The first thing on his mind is the filthy. He doesn't start with the just and the righteous and those doing righteous acts. He starts with the filthy because these are the ones he has in his mind. He's coming off of this intense experience where he goes in spirit to the third heaven. And I remember talking to a guy once, a high school kid. He was a friend of my son's. He went into the Marines. He was a typical high school kid. Then he went into the Marines and he experienced such discipline. And he became a new person, really, a new man through the discipline of the Marines. And it was a 9 week boot camp. I mean, you're changed, man. And you come out of there, and he came out of there and then went to a high school basketball game. And he said to my son, and my son relayed this to me, everything at the high school basketball game seemed so frivolous after I'd been through this experience. How could I have once been in this environment and thought it was exciting, thought it tasted good, wanted to get drunk on it? He was such a disciplined person by that time. And all these cheering people who were getting so excited about people putting a ball through a hoop, and they cared about the score of South Central versus, South Central Trojans versus the I can't even think of another team in that Firelands division. Who was, not one team, St. Paul. What? St. Paul of Norwalk. What was their mascot? What were they called? The St. Paul what? Let's say the Willard Flashes. I'll just say the Willard Flashes. Who cares what the score is between the South Central Trojans and the Willard Flashes? Who cares? This is John coming off the high of the unveiling. He has no more desire to reform people. He has no more need to really stir the pot and make things happen. He has given up on any human hope. As David says in the Psalms, salvation from a human is futile. It takes humans a long time to come to this truth. It takes them a long time to unhand their own desires, their own, really, you have a desire to be a part of it. You want to be part of the mix. You want to make things happen. We are a part of the mix, but our part is to await the coming of our Savior. In the meantime, we're vessels of honor, and we are ambassadors of the peace of God, telling the world that God is conciliated to them. That's peace. It's a one-sided peace. It will be two-sided when they receive it. So I think this is us too. Let the filthy be filthy still. I mean, listen, this is the best thing for me to do is I put a truth down in this show. When I turn off the camera, when I'm done, I publish it. Other people publish it. Selena in Massachusetts and my sister Kelly in Canton, Ohio, they publish it. And I just sit back and hope that the word takes root. I don't chase it down. I don't follow it. I don't do follow-up surveys. I don't write people to see, how did you receive my message? Did you like it? Some people don't like my messages. Other people love them. Most people love them. Only 1 out of 1,000 who listens to them hate them. That's whatever. I got to let the chips fall. I do my thing. I pull the pin on the grenade, toss it in the room, and excuse myself. And let you figure it out with God. I will answer the occasional question. I want to be helpful. But I can't indulge in any wish, because it's probably a selfish wish, to see the world reformed. So I am in the position, maybe you are too, that John is here after he's come off this high of the vision and say, let the filthy just remain filthy still. If that's what you are, be that way. Let those who injure keep injuring. What am I going to do about it? There's murder in the world. I can't stand it. I can't stand violence. This guy's shooting people in Las Vegas from the Mandalay Hotel. I'm not shocked by it because it's the soup du jour. It's the shit du jour. Mass murder is the shit du jour. So people are saying to me, Martin, are you shocked that this happened? No, I'm shocked it doesn't happen every day. I'm shocked that 50 people don't die every day by random shooters who crack, who lose it. Am I shocked at the suicide rate? Yes, I am. I'm shocked that it's not higher. How are 1 million people a day not killing themselves? I don't understand it. So if you tell me somebody killed themselves, I'm like, yeah, okay. Of course they did. People are on drugs. I mean, it's worldwide. It's an epidemic. Epidemically on drugs, people are, because of the nature of the eon, because of the stresses and pressures of life that are unprecedented. Oh, Martin Zender, it's always been this way. You make such a big a deal of this life as if things have never been this stressful before. Well, not in the volume. It's the volume. I keep telling you this. The volume. It's an everyday occurrence. Really, it is. It's not an isolated incident. Terrible incident here, terrible incident there. No, it's everywhere. Again, it's in schools. It's at the laundromat. It's at music festivals. It's in the homes. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I might have to lose this shirt. These horizontal stripes are messing with me. But I seem to do well in horizontal stripes, strangely enough. Maybe it's this idea that I have to overcome something. I don't know. So let's go on in verse 12. Lo, I am coming swiftly, and my wage is with me. Yes, we discussed that. To pay each one as his work is. Again, I will reiterate this with Paul. This is an added bonus. This is the icing on the cake of salvation. Salvation's the cake. Icing on the cake is rewards according to your works. But with the circumcision, it is the cake. It's the cake and the icing and the flower, the floral flourishes, flowers that are made with icing being squeezed from a icing squeezer. It's the whole thing. Happy are those. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the origin and the consummation. Here's the question. Why is he giving the same description of the same thing? These aren't the same descriptions of the same thing. If there are three different descriptions, namely the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the origin and the consummation, if they are three different things, then it wouldn't, if they are three similar things, then it wouldn't be said three different ways. Alpha and Omega, but I'm not saying I know what they are. I mean, I'm only the host of the Revelation series. You expect me to know the difference between the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, and the origin and the consummation, when it all seems to be the same? As I speak to you right now, I don't know what the difference is, except Alpha and Omega is like the Greek alphabet. Alpha is the first letter in the alphabet, and Omega is the last letter of the alphabet. So you say, what's the difference between that and first and last? Except this. It's specific. Alpha and Omega, you're looking at an image. The Alpha is the letter. The Omega is a letter. It's something we're reading. And so I think it's helpful to see, it's nice to know the first and the last. That's the concept. But here, John, by the Holy Spirit, is taking the concept of the first and the last. I'm not saying it's not a fact. I'm just saying it's a fact as drawn up on, it's a fact as told to you by word of mouth. But now to say the Alpha and the Omega, it puts the rubber down on the road here. It shows us letters of the alphabet, and I can see one's life reflected in the letters of the alphabet. You might as well say, I am your babyhood and your adulthood. I have your life bookended. So it's not this abstract concept, I'm the first and the last, because that could be impersonal. You could say, well, he's the first in that he breathed everything into existence. It's the last, in other words, when he inhales, everything comes back to him. That's nice, but when you're the Alpha and the Omega, not only are you verifying this word that was given to John through letters such as Alpha and Omega and every letter in between, he wrote it in Greek, not only are you really verbally verifying with using those letters, which was probably a shock to John as he's writing it down. The Alpha and the Omega, that's my alphabet. This would be like God saying to us, I am the A and the Z. That sounds so juvenile, doesn't it? You learn the alphabet in grade school. I'm the A and the Z. You can make up a song to it like A, B, C, D. Yeah, that's pretty catchy. Start at A, go to Z. But it's comforting to know that God is that elemental. He's that elementary. He will come to you in your second grade class or your first grade class, sit down next to you while you're learning the alphabet and say, do you see this A? I got that covered. You see the Z? I have that covered. I have the entire language covered. Every thought you have that's reflected in every word you speak, I'm there from beginning to end. But it's just a little more concrete. The first and the last, the origin and the consummation. Now we're talking big picture. You see, he's just bookending himself, and he's doing it in ways that are both comforting and awe-inspiring. I can sit there as he sings me the alphabet, but when he starts talking about the origin and the consummation, you just want to fall down on your face and worship him. This is the origin and the consummation. This is speaking of breathing into existence everything that is, and then breathing out, and your very word accomplishes that for which you set it out. And then when you inhale, You take everything back to yourself. Romans 11:36, all is out of God, all is through God, and all is into God. Everything has its source in God. Everything exists because of God, and everything returns to God. This is the origin and the consummation. But he's also the Alpha and the Omega as you're sitting at your little desk, as I'm sitting at my little desk. He's also the first and the last. Speaks of starting things. Origin and the consummation. Yes, that brings life into existence. That starts the atoms spinning, and it brings them back. But the first and the last talks about a program. It talks about a plan, the purpose of the eons, Ephesians 2:11, or is it 3:11? Read the whole book of Ephesians, you'll find it. That there is a step-by-step operation here. And this is the one who gave John the revelation. And that would comfort John, especially in light of what he just said. Honestly, look at the context here. He just says, let the injurer injure still, let the filthy be filthy still, and the just one do righteousness. Lo, I'm coming swiftly. I'm the Alpha, the Omega, the first and the last, the origin and the consummation. It causes you to rest. It causes you to rest. And especially in light of you being probably concerned about yourself, that why am I even saying this? If I were John, and I was a member of the circumcision who tended to want to micromanage everything, tended to want to fix things, tended to want to be able to explain everything, and to have all your ducks lined up, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. This is another thing with Alpha and Omega. You don't have to line up all the ducks. If he's the Alpha and he's the Omega, then he bookends it. He has everything in between lined up. And so just knowing that he's the Alpha and the Omega, he's the beginning and the end, the first and the last, I can relax in the middle, knowing that it started in him, it ended in him. Paul said this to the Galatians, having begun in spirit, are you now going to be perfected in the flesh? Why are you that way? How could you be that way when the Spirit is the beginning and the Spirit is also going to be the end? And if it's the beginning and the end, then everything in between is covered. He doesn't have to go to the details, is what I think. He doesn't have to give you every detail. In fact, we don't know every detail of life. We don't know what's going to happen today exactly. We don't know what we're going to do. You don't know what you're going to do as soon as this show ends, and neither do I. But when I know that he's the origin and the consummation, that's all I need to know. He's the first Adam and the last Adam. Oh, but what about all the atoms in between? What about all the atoms in between? He breathed out the first Adam, and every single atom in between, every single person that's been born came out of that. And if he makes a promise to us that all will be consummated in the last Adam, then how is it that you can even worry about all the atoms in between? He could take every individual one, but this book would be a lot thicker if he did that. So he doesn't have to do it. He just says he's the first and the last. And if you don't see that as covering everything else in between, well, perhaps now you do.